All right, today we are going on a hunt for a civilization that might have existed long, long before us, buried in the absolute abyss of deep time. So, let's dive right in.
So let's start with this. If a civilization existed on Earth 100 million years ago, how would we even know? I mean, think about it. It's a pretty mind-bending question, right? We all just kind of assume we're the first industrial species to ever pop up on this planet. But what if we're not? What if millions and millions of years ago, some other species built cities, had technology, and then just vanished? What could they possibly leave behind for us to find?
Now, this isn't just some late-night conspiracy talk. This is actually a serious thought experiment from some top-tier scientists. It's called the Silurian Hypothesis. And yeah, for you fellow nerds out there, that name is a nod to a certain reptilian species from Doctor Who. But the goal here isn't really to find lizard people. It's to ask a much bigger, more profound question. What kind of fingerprint, a geological signature, would a civilization like ours actually leave behind for someone to find millions of years from now?
Okay, Section 1, the planet that erases. And the subtitle here is key, why we can't just look for their cities. Because our investigation starts with a huge problem. The crime scene, the entire planet, has basically been wiped clean. We can't just go looking for ancient ruins, because Earth itself is the prime suspect in destroying the evidence.
You see, our planet isn't some static museum, perfectly preserving everything from the past. Oh no, it's an incredibly dynamic, violent, geological engine. You've got these immense forces, plate tectonics, constant weathering, erosion, that are just relentlessly grinding, melting, and burying the surface. They're literally erasing history almost as fast as it happens.
And to give you an idea of the scale of this erasure, look at this number, 180 million years. That is the age of the oldest ocean floor we have today. Anything older than that is gone. So any coastal cities, any deep-sea structures from the time of the dinosaurs, they've literally been dragged down into the Earth's mantle and melted back into magma. They're not just buried, they are completely, utterly gone. And on land, it's pretty much the same story. The oldest, large, continuous land surface is only about 1.8 million years old. Think about that. Everything else has been ground down to dust by wind and rain over eons. Yeah, we've found some amazing hominid footprints from 3.7 million years ago, but that's an incredible exception. Go much farther back than that, and the record just goes blank.
So the conclusion here is pretty stark. The idea of finding fossilized skyscrapers or ancient cities, it's a complete dead end. The planet itself has made sure of that. Which means, if we're going to find any trace of a lost civilization, we need a whole new way of looking, a totally different forensic approach.
Which brings us to Section 2, Forensic Clues in Stone. The search for microscopic and chemical traces. Since all the big stuff is gone, we've got to think small, like really small. We have to look for the tiny, microscopic ghosts and the chemical fingerprints that an industrial society would leave behind, baked right into the rock itself.
And this leads us to this really cool concept called technofossils. These are basically what they sound like, the preserved, fossilized remnants of technology, the tiny, super durable bits and pieces of our stuff that could actually survive for millions of years in the rock record.
Okay, just look at some of these examples. That little tiny ball in a ballpoint pen, it's often made of tungsten carbide. That little sphere could survive, completely unchanged, for over 100 million years. And get this, our plastic waste, the most disposable, throwaway stuff we make, it would eventually break down and get buried, becoming these strange hydrocarbon trace fossils. It's kind of wild to think that our single-use junk might be our most lasting physical mark on the planet. These are exactly the kind of weird, unnatural anomalies we'd need to be looking for.
But it's not just about tiny physical objects. An industrial civilization does something even bigger. It literally rewires a planet's entire chemistry, leaving behind this massive chemical fingerprint on a global scale.
So basically, an industrial society changes the actual flavor of the elements in the atmosphere. You see, you have things called isotopes. They're just different versions of an element. Think carbon-12 versus carbon-13. When we burn fossil fuels, we release a ton of the lighter kind of carbon into the air, and that changes the global ratio. The same thing happens with nitrogen, thanks to all our fertilizers. And all of this leads to rapid global warming, which leaves its own separate signature in oxygen isotopes in the rock. This isn't just a local clue. This is a global alarm bell going off in the geological record.
All right, Section 3, Nature's Perfect Alibi, a natural event that looks just like industry. So we have our checklist of clues, right? We just scan the rock record for them and boom, case closed. Well, not so fast, because this is where our detective story gets a major plot twist. It turns out nature has a perfect alibi.
And our prime suspect for this case of mistaken identity is an event called the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, or PETM for short. This was a period of really intense, rapid global warming that happened about 56 million years ago.
Now here is the crazy part. The chemical fingerprint of the PTM is, well, it's eerily similar to ours, the one we're creating right now. Both events involved a massive release of carbon into the atmosphere. Both left behind a sharp negative shift in those carbon isotopes we talked about, and both caused rapid global warming. Now, the PTM was almost certainly a natural event, but its signature in the rock is a near-perfect match for the industrial age. It's a geological doppelganger.
So this is the core challenge right here. Just finding a carbon spike and signs of global warming, it's not enough. It's not the smoking gun we thought it was, because nature can totally mimic that exact evidence. We need something more, something undeniable.
Okay, so Section 4, the industrial smoking gun. What would it actually take to prove it? If the main clues can be faked by nature, how could we ever be sure a civilization was here? What would it take to get a definitive conviction in our geological court?
Well, the answer isn't about finding just one magic piece of evidence. The real proof would be finding a convergence of a whole bunch of really bizarre, unrelated clues, all showing up at the exact same time in the exact same thin layer of rock.
This checklist right here, this is the true smoking gun. You'd need to find that sudden, massive carbon isotope spike, but also, in that same layer, anomalous metals, like pure refined aluminum. And you'd need the molecular fossils of synthetic things like plastics. And for the final nail in the coffin, you'd find long-lived radioactive isotopes that don't occur in nature, like plutonium-244. That stuff has a half-life of 81 million years.
See, there is absolutely no natural mechanism that could produce all of those fingerprints at once. A massive volcanic eruption could release a bunch of carbon, sure, but it can't also manufacture plastics and cook up plutonium. Finding that entire cocktail of evidence together, that's the one signal that geology can't fake. That would be it, definitive proof.
So, armed with our new checklist, we could start drilling deep into ancient rock layers all over the world. But there's one last, really fascinating twist to this whole investigation. A new lead that takes us completely off-world.
Think about it. We've established that Earth is a geologically violent crime scene that's constantly erasing the evidence. It's a terrible place for long-term preservation. But right next door, in space, we have the Moon and Mars. These are geologically dead worlds. For our purposes, they are pristine, deep-time preservation vaults. They don't erase anything.
So, the mind-blowing conclusion is this. The best place to find the ruins of a prior Earth civilization might not be on Earth at all. You have to figure, any civilization advanced enough to leave that complex industrial fingerprint we talked about was probably advanced enough to at least get to their moon, right? And any junk, any rovers, any flags they left on the moon or on Mars would be perfectly preserved, safe from all of Earth's geology, just waiting there for billions of years.
Now, to be clear, we haven't found any evidence for a lost civilization. Not yet, anyway. But this whole thought experiment, the Silurian Hypothesis, it forces us to turn the camera around and look at ourselves. It makes us think about our own civilization on a geological timescale. Everything we've built, everything we've done, it's all eventually going to be compressed into a single millimeter-thick layer of strange chemistry in the rock. And that leads to the final big question. What will our civilization's final millimeter-thick legacy be? What story is it going to tell?